Welcome back for another Herbalism 101 video. My name is Danae. I am an organic gardener and herbalist here in the beautiful state of Maine. And today we're going to talk about all of the tools that you need to begin your herbalism journey. Learning the craft of herbalism is a very rewarding hobby. It's also a rewarding career if you want to take it to the next level. And I've noticed that it's really gaining popularity in the last few years, especially since 2020. And I think that's for a number of reasons. I think folks are trying to reconnect with nature. Some folks are interested in learning about their ancestral history, and other folks maybe are also looking for an alternative to modern day medicine, looking for more friendly, holistic ways to take care of their health. Since becoming an herbalist, I've tried many tools, some that I love, some that I will definitely never use again. And today I want to fill you in on my experience so that you can know when you should thrift, what you should buy, and which tools are going to work best for you depending on your lifestyle. Now, before we dive in, if you're already a supporter of this channel, please don't forget to hit the like button down below. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. I would love to have you here. So today we're going to be focusing on the tools needed, and we won't be talking as much about where to source herbs, especially if you're looking for herbs that are organic or ethically and sustainably sourced, especially if those are herbs that are wild foraged. There's just so much to cover in that one topic that I didn't want to try to cram them into one video. So like I said, today we're going to focus on just the tools, and in a future video I will talk about where to source your herbs and other ingredients that you'll need for your herbal remedies. So the very first question you want to ask yourself when determining what tools you'll need to practice herbalism is what your end products are. What is it that you intend to make? In this video, we're going to focus on some very basic herbal remedies like teas, tinctures, salves, and oil infusions, and everything that you would need to get started with that. Now, our very first tool is the classic mortar and pestle. So a mortar and pestle is a pair of a bowl, the mortar, and the pestle, which is a tool used for crushing and grinding ingredients. Mortar and pestles can be made of marble, granite, ceramic, or wood. I've also seen ones that are made of stainless steel. Personally, I like to work with a granite or marble mortar and pestle, as those will last the longest. Now, you may be wondering, why even bother with a mortar and pestle if you're already buying pre-crushed and powdered herbs? And what I would say to that is, if you are seriously interested in herbalism, especially using herbalism for medicine, it's important to get herbs as close to their fresh and whole form as possible. So there's this process called oxidation, which breaks down many of the beneficial constituents that we find in herbs. And this happens to an even greater extent if the herbs are broken down, because there's just more surface area for oxygen to get in and degrade the material. So if you buy pre-crushed and powdered herbs, you're going to be working with a lower quality herb than if you bought the herbs in whole form. Mortar and pestles range from $15 to $30, so it's a pretty affordable option. You can potentially find these at thrift stores, though it's a bit of a harder find. So I would recommend just buying one. Buy a good quality mortar and pestle and you'll never have to buy one again. Now, one note when you are shopping for a mortar and pestle: beware smooth bottom mortars. So I did not know this when I was shopping for my own, and I have two. I saw this really beautiful one at Bed Bath & Beyond. It was a jade green marble mortar, and I purchased it because it looked so beautiful and it had a nice large bowl for crushing up a larger amount of ingredients. But when I got it home, I realized that it had a perfectly smooth bottom, which does not work very well if you're trying to crush and grind and powder herbs very finely. Now, a smooth bottom mortar might work well for fresh herbs if you're just trying to crush a few things, but it does not work well for most other ingredients. It kind of just slides around in there. There's not enough friction. So make sure when you are buying a mortar and pestle that you pay attention to the natural friction at the bottom of the mortar. Next is a no-brainer. You're going to need a lot of airtight, preferably glass bottles and jars. So these glass bottles and jars are going to be used to store everything from your dried herbs, your tinctures, salves, other different herbal remedies that you need to keep airtight and in a place where it can be safely preserved. So obviously mason jars and ball jars are a very popular choice for storing herbs, but there's lots of other options that can be more economical and a bit more quirky and interesting. I love to use an assortment of glass bottles. So some of the recycled glass that I still use to this day include hot sauce bottles. I love hot sauce bottles because it has that taper at the opening that slows the pour, which can be very useful if you're trying to get measured amounts of a certain herb or an oil. I also have used things like funny shaped vinegar bottles, apple cider vinegar bottles. I've used things like decorative bottles used to store mead, obviously honey jars, jam jars. Those are all great candidates for using upcycled glass in your apothecary. Another great option for storing a small amount of herbs or tinctures is glass herb and spice jars. And if you're interested in seeing all of the different ways I use glass and herb spice jars, I especially love using them for gifting certain herbal remedies. Please feel free to check out that video right up here. Now there are a few more considerations when you're looking at glass jars. So if you're able to find glass jars that have a natural darkening to the glass, so I'm not talking about if it's painted on the inside, we don't want to mess around with any paint or paint products getting into our herbal remedies. But if you find something like a amber colored bottle or a blue or green colored bottle, those are going to help store your ingredients for longer as it's protecting it from the degradation caused by UV rays. One item that you might have to buy, depending on what you have in your current medicine cabinet, are dropper bottles. So dropper bottles are usually amber colored and they're great for using for tinctures and oils, and they have that little pipette, not a pipette probably. They have the little glass dropper in it that usually screws on top to serve as a lid as well. Those are incredibly useful, and you can get those pretty cheap on Amazon. You can usually get them in bulk for pretty cheap. I've gotten a collection of like 12 to 24 count for less than $15. Now, one final consideration when you're using glass in your apothecary is to consider the material that the lid is made of. So if you're making things like herb infused vinegars, those have a reaction to the metal bands that are found on mason jars, the metal bands in the lids. So usually if I'm making something that is acidic, I do like to store it with either a plastic lid on top or a wooden lid. So just something to consider. Number 3 is a tea kettle or saucepan. So this one's pretty straightforward if you're making certain herbal remedies like teas and decoctions, and a lot of other things too, like salves. If you're working with beeswax, you'll want a double boiler system, and we'll go into that in a future video. But it's going to be important that you have a way to heat up your herbs in hot water. I do want to make it clear there is a difference between a tea kettle and a teapot, because sometimes folks get this confused. So a tea kettle is something that you can put directly on heat to heat up water, whereas a teapot is usually used as a place to infuse herbs. After you'll add the herbs to the teapot and then pour in the hot water, but you don't put the teapot directly on heat. That will generally cause it to shatter. So make sure when you are selecting a tea kettle that it is truly a tea kettle and it's not a teapot like a brown Betty. Now, I've tried many different types of tea kettles. I have really enjoyed using glass tea kettles, but I will say, as beautiful as it is to watch the herbs diffuse into the solution as you're heating it up, especially the glass kettles that have the built-in diffuser, unfortunately they tend to break. I use a propane stove, which has a little bit less control over how hot the burning element gets versus like a glass top stove or an electric stove. And so I've had 2 tea kettles that were made of glass unfortunately break on me. They are more heat sensitive, so you have to be a bit more careful with those. I would recommend starting with a stainless steel kettle, as this is going to be reliable. You don't have to worry about it breaking, and you can put it on most heating elements, including directly over an open fire. Another great option is an electric tea kettle. So electric tea kettles are perfect for small apartments. They heat up the water within 3 minutes, so it's very fast and convenient. I actually have an electric tea kettle right up here in my apothecary, which is on the 2nd floor of our house. And I find this super helpful, especially when my husband and I are sick and we don't want to have to keep making trips downstairs to make medicinal teas. We have this right up here where it's convenient for us. Next, once you have a way to heat up your herbs, you're going to need a way to strain your herbs. And there are so many ways to go about this. And it really just depends on your lifestyle and what you find most convenient for you, how to go about this. So there's the classic basket strainer, and these are the ones that are usually made of metal, and they just go directly into the mug. You fill them up with the herbs, pour the water over it, and you just let it sit there. My favorite basket strainer currently is from a company called Yowasi. And there's a lot of different companies that make a similar product, but it's a very nice basket strainer that has two wings on it so it can set over the cup. The downside is that it doesn't work well with larger mugs. Obviously, it would just fall right in just like any basket strainer. But what I do like about it is it comes with a cover so you can trap the essential oils that would normally evaporate from fresh herbs. And once you've finished heating up the tea, you can take off that cover, set it on the table, and then set the basket on that so that you're not making a mess wherever you set the used basket. Now, if you don't like basket strainers or you're using a number of assorted mugs that have different mouth sizes, tea bags are a great way to go. You can easily get a 100 count of biodegradable tea bags for under $8. My favorite company is Tempest in a Teapot. They also sell herbs, but they sell a 100 count of biodegradable tea bags that don't have any metal bits in them, so it's perfectly safe to compost once you're done using them. Another option is reusable tea bags. Those are usually made out of a cloth material. I personally don't like those as much. Over time they get a discoloration, and that can be a bit of a turnoff for folks if you're trying to make tea for guests, but it is an option if you want something that is reusable and reduce waste. Tea balls are great. I would say they are my second favorite option after the tea basket. What's great about a large tea ball is you can put that directly into your kettle and prepare the herbs that way, so you can make large batches. Of course, there's also the smaller tea balls that you can put directly into a mug, and they usually come with a little chain so you can easily pull it out and remove it once you're done diffusing the herbs. I've bought kind of the gimmicky ones in the past where they had them in cute little shapes like a heart and a house and different things. They're great for giving as gifts to folks who have never tried loose leaf tea, but if you're trying to do herbalism for medicinal purposes, you just can't fit the amount of herbs you would need to get the beneficial constituents. And they tend to not be well made, they'll pop open, and the last thing you want is to take the time to make a nice cup of tea and then have all of the herbs spill out of the tea ball. So just something to keep in mind. I've ordered those in the past, and at this point I just give them away as gifts because I don't find them very helpful in my practice. Another downside to tea balls and tea baskets is that they don't handle really finely ground herbs well. So if you're powdering your herbs and you add those to a tea ball or a tea basket, they're just going to slip right through those holes, and you're going to end up with that grittiness at the bottom of your cup. If you're working with powdered herbs, definitely using a cheesecloth strainer or a reusable or disposable tea bag. One of those ones with the really fine mesh is going to work better for you than a metal tea ball. So yeah, speaking of cheesecloth, there's nut milk bags. So at the beginning I mentioned that you can just use a saucepan rather than a tea kettle. And in the saucepan, you're just going to add the herbs directly to it. You can make a tea or a decoction. And a decoction is just boiling the herbs and reducing it into a more concentrated mixture. But if you're going to use that method, using a cheesecloth works just fine. You can make large batches of herbs, store them in your fridge, and that's a really great time-saving mechanism. So one final note about strainers. If you are making single cups of tea, I would definitely recommend getting multiple strainers, multiple tea baskets or tea balls, whatever it is that you prefer to use. It's very easy as an herbalist to forget how hard it is to actually put in the effort of making tea blends and making medicinal solutions when you're actually sick. So just having extra around really helps make your life a little bit easier. So item number 5 are funnels. So funnels are pretty straightforward. If you are using mismatched bottles or bottles that have very small mouths, you're going to want an easy way to get your herbal remedies into those bottles, and funnels are the way to go. So you can buy a set of 3 different sized funnels easily on Amazon for anywhere between $5 to $8. Funnels, a very simple tool that is often overlooked, but very useful to have. Item number 6, bottle brushes and pipe cleaners. So if you're serious about herbalism, cleanliness is so important. You want to have a very effective way of cleaning out your herbal medicine bottles. And if you're working with a lot of small bottles, especially dropper bottles, you're going to need a way to clean those out. So pipe cleaners and bottle brushes are essential. It's an item that's often overlooked until you actually need to use it. So I would definitely recommend getting something like that. Bottle brushes are very easy to find. You can usually find them in like the baby aisle at any box store. You can also buy things like specialized pipe cleaners at brewery stores or any natural health store. Those are just common tools used by herbalists and for other crafts like brewing. So they're pretty easy to find if you know where to look for them. Item number 7 to begin your herbalism journey is to have a reliable notebook. So it's important to take very good notes when you're an herbalist, similar to the notes that you would take as a scientist researching any topic. You want to pay attention to what herbs you're using in your blends, what the effect is when you take that herb or administer that herb, and just keeping track of general things. Do you like the flavor? Do you like the combination? Do you like the aroma or smell of the herb? Taking good notes allows you to replicate your process if you find something that works well, especially if you move into things like herbal consultation, whether you're doing it just for your family or for people outside of your family. You're going to want to have a good understanding of your client's needs, what they typically experience for illnesses throughout the year, and pairing the correct herbs to support that person. So to just show you an example, I use this notebook for keeping track of just different recipes in my house, not just herbs, but I have used it extensively for keeping track of different herbal remedies. I have a sleepy time tea, a menstrual tea, allergy tea, detox tea, and I still often come back to this notebook to get my bearings about how to make different formulas each year, though I do try something new every year. Segueing away from notebooks, we're going to talk about our final essential tool for a beginner herbalist, which is Herbalism Books. So I think it's best to have at least 3 books that you can cross-reference. And the reason I say this is you want to have a well-rounded knowledge of herbalism. It helps build confidence in you and others that you've done your research, and having multiple books to cross-reference will help you determine, okay, so all 3 of these books say that lavender is great for sleep. We can probably trust that lavender is good for sleep, whereas another book might say lemon balm is good for anxiety, and another book might not mention it at all. So it's good to see what remains true among all of the books that you have read. It's good to see where the authors have done their research, and you can usually find that in the index of the book. And it just helps show that you are committed to learning as much as you can about herbs and trusting other sources, other experts, and really doing your due diligence. Now, as far as books I would recommend for beginners, anything by Julie Bruttenseal and Matthew Seal is a great choice. Anything by Rosemary Gladstar, she's kind of the pioneer of making herbalism accessible to the average person, and she really makes it a fun craft without going too deep into exact measurements for things. So if you're looking for a more casual approach, definitely recommend Rosemary Gladstar's works. If you're interested in learning more about what books are great for beginners, I highly recommend that you watch this video up here. So that video is going to cover all of my recommended books that I started with as a beginner herbalist, and you'll also find in the comment section folks sharing their own favorite books. So it's a great resource if you're looking for titles to expand your herbalism library. So those are all of the essential tools you'll need as a beginner herbalist. If you feel that I missed something, please mention it in the comments below. I'm sure it would be helpful to others as well. I hope that you found this video helpful, and if you did, please hit the like button down below. More content to come very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.